Hello, everyone. I'm very excited to be here. I hope you guys are as well, because normally when I do this, it's for one-on-one with the startups itself. Thank you. Yeah. And today, I get to kill many birds by sharing all that I have. So my topic today is about fundamentals, right? I actually gave a long, hard thought about this because I don't want this session to be another digital marketing session. I don't want this to be a growth hacking session as well because there will be many of them. I want to go back to fundamentals because most of you here, how many are aspiring entrepreneurs? How many are existing entrepreneurs? How many have raised some funds? Lucky you, right? So in most cases, the startups that I work with don't have money. So it's very important that I go back to fundamentals and to share with you some of the case studies that I have on how to build your growth, your initial traction. We're not talking about millions of users here, or we're not talking about millions of dollars here, but it's just to give you some form of traction to get yourself going so that the investors will talk to you. So my topic here is about fundamentals. I'll go back to the fundamentals of the 4 P's of marketing, which is product, pricing, placement, and as well as promotions. So just for housekeeping purposes, I'll go through a few things that I'll be covering today. The first part I'll be covering in terms of will be a background, and why is this approach important? The second part is about most common questions that I get by working with startups, what the feedback that I get, and how we derive campaigns around them, and to quantify them, something that is on more like a plug-and-play thing that you can just plug into your website or your application that can work and give you traction for tomorrow. And last but not least, there'll be some time for Q&A as well. So I'll give you a bit of background on myself first, right? I've been working for the past 15 years, right? I started off very much as a marketer, which is why you'll see that my approach is very much coming back down from a product marketing perspective. I was a brand manager for Hennessy and Guess. I also spent a couple of years as a management consultant with Accenture, specializing in sales and marketing transformation. I also spent a few years as per any Chinaman out here, right, who wants to run their own business. So I did a bit of F&B as well. But it's during this F&B time that is most crucial for me because during this time is where I get to interact with startups. It was the year 2010 during the World Cup, South African World Cup, right? And a month after the World Cup, about August and September, I counted in my spreadsheet there were about 60 group buying sites that came to me, right? And the most famous one, of course, those days is less famous, Group Small under Joe Neo, right? And he came to me, actually his sales manager came to me and he said, look, but do you want to run a campaign with your restaurant, right? I can roughly tell you that you can get about maybe 100 to 200 orders, which I thought was fantastic because I need to fill up the seats anyway, right? So 1 week later, after 5 days, he came in and said, hey, we managed to sell 800 over tickets, 800 over vouchers, which I thought was quite appalling because it's very hard to get that, to fill up the seats, right? So my interest in e-commerce actually started from there, and I started reading every material that I have, and in F&B, we have a lot of downtime, the time that you don't have customers coming to you and your friends are busy working. Your girlfriend, or now my wife here now, right? She can only spend as much time as with you. So I spent a lot of time reading about eBay, business models, Amazon, and more importantly, Groupon, to understand how did they make money from there. So I was so intrigued with e-commerce and the information that I've got, and after my partners and I saw off our F&B business, it's actually like a calling, that I got a call from Zalora to join them. And at that point of time, Zalora was a total mess because it was just only month 2. Right? Before I joined, I already know that I'm going to quit because it was, as you Google about Rocket Internet, and you can find that there is such a mess in the first year there. But I told myself to go in there because I wanted to learn how they do it, and they're very world famous for that, right? And so I spent a year there, armed with the information and expertise that I have, which you'll be seeing some of the campaigns that I'll be sharing with you later on. And I was headhunted to start the Malaysian chapter for MySale, which is essentially a flash site for fashion goods. So think Groupon, but more on the fashion vertical here, right? So I spent some time building up MaGIC. So building up MaGIC, although it's a corporate company, right, they have funds and all these things, they are from Australia and UK, it's still treated very much as a startup because we have limited funds. We started with just 3 of us, myself and 2 other hires, right? And each campaign that I build needs to grow in traction because if I don't manage to do that, the office will close and I'm jobless after that. So along the journey here, so I will share you some campaigns that I built, how I managed to grow from MaGIC from very little orders to when I left a few months ago was about 8-digit figures. So after I left MaGIC last year, I told myself this year, 2015, is going to be a giving back year for me, which is why I jumped on a vehicle called MaGIC, a fantastic vehicle. You guys should read more about them, mymagic.my, right? And here I am helping startups, in particular with the MaGIC Accelerator program, to help them and to understand what their needs. So you see the collection of comments that I'll be sharing with you and the campaigns that we're building around all this actually coming from my own experience, your experience talking to me, and as well as startups from outside MaGIC here. I'm going to hijack Cheryl's session a little bit here because this is very crucial. Right? So for benefit of everyone, Cheryl, you're the CEO of MaGIC, so she's going to run a session on setting a metric as well. One of the workshops that she'll be doing at 3:15 later. But it's also important that I touch a little bit on this because this is the key element or the few fundamentals that you need to do to start your website, whether it's for e-commerce or any other business out there, right? So when I started my sale there, I told myself the key metric that we'll be focusing on because without revenue, there'll be no traction. There'll be no traction, I'll be out of job. Very simple as that. So I focused myself to revenue, and I put revenue as a star metric here. And this is also later supplemented by additional metrics such as higher gross profit. And we derive several funnel drivers to contribute towards the star metric here. An example of a funnel driver could be like visitors to your website or even your apps and whatnot, right? And how to improve conversion rate from the existing base that you might already have. And every campaign that we build around there points towards that. I'm very similar to you guys. Apart from setting a star metric, I also have to validate and also have to listen to my customers. I also have to listen to you guys based on the feedback that you get from your customers here. There's a whole plethora of comments that comes back from your customers. Some they want it faster, some they want it longer, some they want it cheaper and all this. But the most common attribute that any startup that I work with will come to me and say that I've got no money. Why am I not getting the traction that I need, right? And how do I go and optimize my traction here? Which is why the few campaigns that I'm building around that I'm going to share with you is going to point towards that. Before that, I also want to share with you the approach that I have here, right? Or rather, it's a marketing approach that's developed by Philip Kotler. The 4 P's here covers product, which is essentially quite different, slightly different from the product that you have from a startup perspective. From a startup perspective, product mainly refers to your website or the application that you're doing, and usually you have some product management around it to ensure that the button is in the right color, and so on and so forth, right? From product, from a marketing perspective, refers to very much from your items and the services that you deal with. See the difference there, right? Pricing. I'll tell you why later with some figures here. Pricing is probably one of the most under-focused metric or attribute from marketing perspective. Placement of your products and services, and as well as some promotion. And adding on a few campaigns that's related to operations as well. So before we start, let's examine, right, an important piece of information here. Why are people shopping online? This information was based on the year 2013, and very similar to you, I do not subscribe to any white paper reports that requires you to pay thousands of dollars. All this is garnered off the internet, and it's free, right? 71% of people actually wants to compare and they shop for good deals. That's the first point. Second one, 64% wants to discover and maybe to buy interesting stuff. The third one, 48%, they want exclusive deals. So all these 3 elements, when you put together, what does that tell you? They're looking for something that's cheap, cheaper than an offline perspective. They want something that's from a novelty perspective, something that you cannot find from an online perspective, which explains why Amazon is doing well, eBay is doing well to some extent, and to a huge extent, MySale, because most of the brands and products are actually coming from outside Malaysia. And so it explains why the top e-commerce site in Malaysia right now is Groupon, because they are the ones that have all these deals that's available and it's cheap. I'm going to cater the structure of the presentation here based on a few elements, right? The first line that you see on top speaks about one of the marketing attribute, which in this instance is talking about product. The inverted commas are actually quotes and unquotes coming from the startups, the feedback we get from them, and as well as the customers, right? The most common misconception that I have, right, is startups coming to me and say that, look, I'm going to target X amount of the market, and in this instance, we are going to target Southeast Asia, which has a population of 600 million. It's going to be bigger than United States of America anytime. It's going to be bigger than Europe anytime, and we are going to be the next unicorn. The first misconception I need to correct here first is that the market in the e-commerce is not as big as you think it is today, right? It may be bigger in times to come as internet penetration rate goes up and the acceptability is there, but right now we are talking about only about 1/3 of it, 200 million. And now this 200 million is huge enough to derive an addressable market, right, depending on the product that you're selling and also the services that you're selling here. The second comment that I get, right, if it sells online, chances are you will sell online as well. But take a step back and think, right, who are the people that's buying online? Of course, there are many ways to cut these attributes. It could be age, it could be your geography, it could be your race, it could be your gender, right? But I'll pick out one that I think that is the most commonly misrepresented, right? The graph, the bar chart here on the left is a bit slightly blurred, but what is important here to derive, in the real world, in the brick and mortar world, the age group of 15 to 34 commands roughly about 60% on the market. But in the digital world, it's totally a different scenario, right? And you see that the people who is falling between the age group of 18 to 35 commands to close to 80% or even more than 80% here. What does that tell you? So if you, again, take a step back, right, reflect back on the products and services that you're about to sell here. Take an instance, an example. If you're selling baby or kids products, ask yourself this question: how many of them, within up to the age of group of 35, are even married and have kids? Right? Of course they are, don't get me wrong, but the percentage is much smaller than what you think it is. So age is only one glaring attribute. I challenge you to look at every other attribute out there, because this will give you a very strong piece of information to give you a clue whether your product is selling or not. Now, coming down to addressable market, I'm planning to sell this product. Does it actually sell? Right? In the infant market now, like Malaysia and Southeast Asia, I don't have the answer for everything. I don't think anyone has it at the same time. But you can do some research. Again, Google will give you free information. Right? I got this from Google. And it tells you the top 5 categories that are selling. It's a no-brainer. Electronics, food and beverage, fashion, and as well as health and beauty products. What's more important? What does not sell? The categories that does not sell is pets, cars, sports items, and of course, there you go, kids and maternity. Remember, I showed you earlier that age is a very important attribute there. So again, I said, I'll leave this slide here as a question back to you. You have to ask yourself the question, do you have a product fit? Chances are, if it is not part of these categories, you're going to have a strong uphill to build your site up. Now we have the bigger picture done. We are zooming down into the smaller picture now in terms of product here, right? The common question that comes to me is fashion is about 50% on the market. 1 out of 2 people actually buy something online. Why am I not getting the traction that I'm projecting here for? Why am I only getting single-digit sales, right? In most cases, you have to ask yourself what you're selling. Yes, you're selling fashion items, but are you giving out enough variation, right? So it's quoting from one of the startups that came to me, right? Lazada and Zalora, each of them has 6-digit number of SKUs or number of variations or choices that you can buy from. But if your site has anything like less than that, like maybe 20, 30, 50, think twice before it's enough to even fulfill the needs of the customer that comes to you. So I was lucky, right? I started off my career with a fashion company. So on the left here, what sells, I roughly can tell, right? So I put these pieces together. Of course, these numbers here are slightly adjusted, right? Because for easy reference purposes and some for sensitive information purposes. That's why they're all rounded up to the nice 5%. The middle column shows you what actually sells, right? Of course, if you start to compare the variation between what people are buying and what you are selling, the variation is more per subcategory within fashion here, like 5% and at most 10%. But if you add up all these things together, for every category, assuming that you have enough SKUs, you notice that it can be quite dramatic. And we put this test towards my sale during my 18 months there, and I noticed that by putting the right merchandising mix together, it may grow up to 30% of your sales within just overnight. So, coming back to here, I did not spend a single cent on marketing to fix my merchandising mix, right? I only spend maybe an hour or two per day from one of my resources to make sure that the products are all merchandised properly on the website. And within overnight or over a month sometimes, right? The growth is about 20, 30% from there. Pricing. A very key, critical, crucial success to Southeast Asia startups here, right? Again, your prices are not attractive enough. Fashion is 50%, but I'm not getting the traction that I need. But look at the reports that we are getting here, right? The one on the left here shows you 44% of the market spends up to only 200 ringgit a month online. And up to 85% spends 500 ringgit, less than 500 ringgit a month. And this is including their travel arrangement they make on a yearly basis, which will amount to about maybe 1,000 or two. Right? If you remove that, the actual spend that they have for actually any other category is actually very small. And if you cross-reference this with the graph on the right here that says that 31% of the online purchases actually earns less than 2,000 a month. So if you're earning 2,000 a month, again, I urge you to reflect how much disposable income do you have to spend, whether it's offline or online, right? And if you look across the bar graphs here, 29% earns up to 4,000, and another 22% earns up to 7.5%. So if you take away 31%, the first 2,000, assuming that they don't have much disposable income, the market is only about 50%, right, that's eager to spend online. And how much are you selling your products if you are not pricing your products are attractive enough? I'll give you a very good example next. This is the test that I do daily in my sale, because my sales is such a price-sensitive site that we need to spend a lot of time doing this stuff here. Again, like I said, these numbers are fabricated, but it's enough to illustrate to you an example of why this works. The dress, lovely dress. The brand probably Zara, right? Good quality. Two scenarios here. Scenario one, we are selling this dress in my sale for about 75 ringgit. We know the cost of goods is roughly about 50 ringgit, which gives you a gross margin of 33%. That means each piece of dress that you sell is about 25 ringgit. And what we notice here, by pricing this product at 75 ringgit, we managed to sell roughly about 20 pieces. And this gives you a gross margin profit of 200 ringgit. Scenario two, right? Pricing the product with just 5 ringgit cheaper per SKU. Managed to get 1,000 ringgit. That is a 100% jump as compared to between scenario 1 and scenario 2. Right? Again, I said, this is how price sensitive the market in Malaysia and Southeast Asia can be. I do not stop here. I'm not happy with just scenario 1 and scenario 2. I'll build a whole lot more price comparison points here at the interval of each 5 ringgit here. So you see on the x-axis here, is the interval of 5 ringgit, starting at the lowest point of 30 ringgit, right up to even 75 ringgit. And the y-axis shows you how many orders that I have for this SKU. These are actual figures, by the way, for a black dress. what we have noticed here is that two things. If I'm trying to determine a sweet spot for a black dress, I can tell from this experiment here, it's roughly about 50 ringgit for the dress, right? And it tapers off as the price gets more expensive. But what's more interesting here is your orders is not optimized when it gets cheaper as well. I'm also curious why when I was doing this. So I went and talked to my customers. I went back to get validation and all, right? And he told me that Malaysia actually has a grey market issue, right? If you price a product that is too cheap, people will think that it's night market quality. So when you have night market quality perception here, it's important also to find a sweet spot for your product, whether it's online or offline, that fulfills the needs and wants of your customers, right? So in this instance here, depending again, that's why I say I show you the chart on metric here, right? If my metric, my star metric here today here is about number of orders and revenue, then I will price this SKU at 50 ringgit. But at this point of time, I have two different metrics that I was looking here. Next slide here will show you. Same figures, but the line that I've drafted it on the other axis are actually my actual profit that I make per item here. And what it tells me is that although I make less revenue, less orders at 60 to 65 ringgit, but in terms of actual revenue that comes back into my pocket, I actually make more. So the question here is that, are you going to protect your gross margin profit, or are you going to protect your revenue, depending on which stage of the startup that you are in right now today that you want to place emphasis on. And more importantly for me, right, because I was looking at GMP and as well as my cost, what we found is that at 65 ringgit per piece, right, is actually my pricing sweet spot, because from my operations perspective, I spend 20% less time to pack less items, and this translates to a higher bottom line for me. Yeah. So by placing these pricing initiatives, which again cost me nothing, but except for a team of like 2 to look across 6 markets, overnight, my campaigns improved by 200%. So if I'm doing 100 orders a day, this campaign gives me 300 orders. Again, I said, something that's very affordable, something that is certainly that you could go back and reflect, right? The pricing points that you are doing, is it the right pricing points that your market needs? I'll move on to the next campaign, which is operations related, right? Direct bank transfers. I know most of you in the startup stage here, by default, you'll go for PayPal because it's the easiest to plug in, right? And in most cases, if you're using Shopify, it's all ready for you. Just press the button, yes, and subscribe. But of course, they don't charge you. They charge you the one of the highest commission rates, about 3.9 or 4%, plus even 2 ringgit per transaction. That's why a lot of startups come to me and say that, hey, is this enough? Should I put in direct bank transfers like Maybank to you, and as well as clicks, right? From this information here, 52% of the transaction comes from direct bank transfers. And if you do recall, the age chart that I showed earlier, about 30+% of the market is below the age of 25. If you're below the age of 25, how many percent of the population that's below the age of 25 actually has a credit card? So I'll leave that as a question to you. So the same issue that I have when I was building my sale as well. We have PayPal, we have credit card, but we do not have direct bank transfers. And immediately, is one of the major campaigns that we need to put it back on, and an improvement, at least a 30% increment, once it's back on. Delivery times. Very hot debate in Malaysian startup scene, in fact, in Southeast Asia as well. Because my sale last time, delivery takes up to 30 days as the products comes from international orders. And the most common one is that your delivery fees are always almost too expensive, right? Let's look at some figures here on the left. 77% of the online shoppers here expect their delivery to be done within less than 4 days. Whether that is even possible or not, it leads to debate for another day. But what we have done is in terms of having campaigns that is sourcing for products locally, and we find that delivery, which is less than 7 days, this is not even 4 days, it's 7 days, our campaigns actually perform 50% better, up to 50% better. Again, like I said, this is something that requires zero marketing dollars. I do not spend a single cent on marketing. Of course, marketing is still moving on the background, but it's very little money. But these are little operations campaigns that you are going to do to your operations that will give you instant results straight away. The one on the right, the chart on the right here talks about turn on. What are the things that your customers are looking for? Number one, if you look across any report, they look for free delivery. I'm going to let you in for a little secret here. I made 2 tests. The first one is that I charge a product at, say, 50 ringgit, and I charge them 10 ringgit delivery fee. So in total, they pay 60 ringgit. Versus scenario 2, I charge a product straight off 60 ringgit. I tell them it's free delivery. Scenario 2, with free delivery, performs 100% better. And in both cases, the customer ends up with the same product, the same fulfillment services, and the same timing that they're going to receive the package. So again, there's something that you can think on and reflect, right? Something you can just plug on and play for tomorrow and test. Placement. It's hard to find my products online. Are you placing your products right on the website? Before I go into your website, how many of y'all do actually go to supermarket to shop? Groceries. I'm sure every one of you have done at least some form of grocery shopping in your life, right? So the question here is that, have you actually wondered why the products are all placed like this? Why is the eggs and bread is always at the far corner? Why is it from an impulse purchase perspective that your sweets, chocolates, chewing gum is always at the cashier counter while you're waiting for the cashier to transact you? Right? It's the same thing on the website. If you have certain categories or brands or items which you think that will be the most useful for you to sell and the customer needs it, are they placed in the right position? So next question that come back to me was, how do you know? The picture behind shows the website. It's just a random website that I took from the internet. Doesn't matter which website at all. But what's more important is the picture on the right is a heat map, right? That tells you exactly what is everyone clicking on for the customers that comes to your website, right? If you know that they are clicking at that far corner for any given reason, are you placing your right products there? Just as simple as that. This is my sales website, right? I took a screen grab maybe a few weeks ago, right? Obviously, I don't have access to their information right now, but 18 months ago, the top campaigns, I will divide this into 2 different sections. Top section, top campaigns, 3 top banners there. Usually it's my top 3 brands, as simple as that. The next part will be the next 6 banners. The secondary sale banner will be the other next 6 brands. And the rest of the banners, you can almost forget about it for my instance there. And what we have noticed is that days that we are doing this exercise versus days that we are not doing this exercise, there's a variance of 20% in terms of number of orders. Again, like I said, right, this doesn't require any form of marketing at all. In fact, people don't even know, right, that we are doing this on the back end. These are all just 1 or 2 resources, right? They're sitting down on the table and just shifting the tiles on your back end and front end. And of course, from a placement perspective, right, this has to be across all your properties. And some properties may behave differently as opposed to the other. Like website and app could be different. And your EDM will be another one that's different as well. So make sure all of them has the right click-through rate, the right conversion rate and whatnot. The next question, another goal question here, mobile. Are you ready for this? And if yes, when? Right? I don't have the money for this. So, like I said, I'll show you some statistics here that we managed to dig from the internet, again, free. Close to 50% of the orders for any given e-commerce site out here actually comes from your mobile app. And it's a growing trend based on the slide that you see here, for both tablet and for mobile applications as well. So whether you want to place emphasis and to develop something that is app-related for your website, I'll leave the question back to you again, when you're ready to do it. in MySale, when I started off with them, they don't have a mobile application. But when we finally have one, month-on-month comparison between a month that doesn't have and with the months that we have, there's an improvement of at least a 50%. Marketing, where should we start? There are easily like hundreds of marketing channels out there online, whether it's using your EDM, whether using your Facebook, whether using a social media versus Google, versus Yahoo, traditional marketing, not getting traction, so on and so forth. Just to share with you some information that is on, that we managed to dig off the internet as well. 69% of the people that shop online in Malaysia actually comes from Google search. And what does Google search means to you? Your SEO, your SEM, and your GDN as well. So again, I ask you a question. If you're doing a website, are you placing enough emphasis on your SEO to have a page 1 rank at least for all the keywords that matters? Are you doing enough SEM if your SEO is not strong enough? And if you want a bit more awareness, then maybe GDN. 58% says that they go directly to site. What does that mean? It could be your existing customers that knows exactly xyz.com, or referral coming from your friends, and probably other channels as well. But again, like I said, all these things like referral, do you even have a mechanism that is in place to incentivize someone to refer your site? Again, like I said, this campaign here, I do not have the golden answers. And in fact, for every startup, it is different, right? Depending on the product that you sell, your website, and whatnot. But I challenge you, are you even testing enough? If you are not, maybe you should. You should try every single channel out there. Every single attributes that you can find. And look for channels and attributes that works for you. Double down on them. It's just as simple as that. Another question that I get from startups, how do we optimize our marketing approach? This is something that is may or may not be money related, right? So if you see on the left, online shoppers prefer to shop at night. 51% likes it at early night. 41% likes it at late night. Right? I'll share with you an interesting piece of information that I managed to gather while I was in MySale. 36% here shops during office hours. And we find when we dig into the database, and we find that these 36% are students, because they don't have office hours. And it's coming from civil servants as well. Right? We see addresses are mainly coming from Cyberjaya, MaGIC included, Putrajaya, and usually the address is Jabatan XYZ. Right? And what we notice also is that why we say a lot of students, we can't tell from their name. Right? And we see students is because the average basket is substantially lower. If your average basket, for me, is about 150 ringgit, but for students, it's usually below 100 ringgit. And we notice by digging into the items that they are buying, it's usually size S, XX, extra small. So you can roughly tell that they are generally a smaller frame, smaller size. And one of the important characteristics that we managed to dig and to verify that as a student, and we actually asked the student herself as well. There's one case which is quite funny. She doesn't have a credit card. So she went to school and she gathered around like 20 students and managed to find one whose father is rich enough to give her a credit card. So she purchased on behalf of 20, like 40 items in one transaction. So looking at the information from MySale perspective, is this a fraudster? So we are a bit worried. So we ring her up and we validate that. And we found that it's a genuine case because it's as simple as they don't have a credit card. They managed to find one that has a credit card and they put these pieces together and we know that they are students. 51% are actually office workers and 41% as well. Those who shop at night. The office workers work probably at 7, 8 o'clock, goes back, eat their dinner, and then they start shopping online. So next question is, when the shoppers actually prefer to shop? I think in this graph here is highlighted as Wednesday as 17%, but I think that's not very important. What is more important is between weekday versus weekend. The contribution of users or customers that is coming within a weekday potentially can be 2 times more than your weekend. So if you're running promotions, you have to be very careful because on weekend, People are out in the shopping malls. They are not coming to your website. Not much, at least half of them is gone. So I'll share with you one very important or rather funny incident that we have at MySale, right? MySale starts our sales campaigns at 9 o'clock because we are flash-based. So 9 o'clock every morning, 30 new sales will go on live. When we saw this report and said, hey, they're actually buying late at night, 51%. So what should we do? So we decided to send out evening email. So one day, we went at one email, our customers are already complaining, right? Why are you sending emails to me every day? We don't open everything. So we decided to send 2 emails. Guess what? The complaints are still coming, for sure, no doubt. But the evening EDM contributed another 20% of our sales, again, overnight. And the effort to send an extra email is actually close to nothing. You don't spend any much dollar to it. The last point here is about customer service, right? A lot of us actually underutilize this, and at the same time, they're not placing as much emphasis simply because a lot of staffs are afraid, because having a call center means a lot of money, have to spend, operations headache, and then when you're handling your call center guys, they are actually not the most diligent and obedient staff, right? So look at this information here. The most preferred communication method with the seller, 86% actually says is the email. And among all the channels here, email is actually the one of the easiest to handle because you have zero interaction with the customer except for handling their emails, right? If you have a template, it's even easier, right? So those are my last slides. As a summary, I wanted to recap this again. Second, your tracking tools is important. Measure your performance, especially your star metric. Research understanding market is vitally important as well. Do not assume. If you're unsure, test. Customer feedback is gold. Listen to your customers and build campaigns around them. If you notice, all my campaigns that I built is actually referring back to one or many customer feedback that I got during my time and as well as for the startups as well. Look at your fundamentals from a product perspective, from a pricing perspective, placement perspective, as well as a promotion perspective. Test, test, test. Double down when your campaign works. On my free time, I'm also an e-commerce consultant. So I do help out with a lot of startups during my free time as well. My email is there. If you have any further questions, or if you want to ask me something that's not related to the campaigns that I presented today, please feel free to do so. Question time. IPA is the one. Yeah. So the contribution of people who actually uses the sleep transfer in Malaysia is relatively small. All right. So when they find out that they can actually use iPay or MoPay or any of the service providers here to easily plug that in, maybe I didn't share enough just now. The process of doing so nowadays is so simple that when you approach MOL Pay or iPay and you tell them you want to plug this in, it will just cost you, of course, some money to set it up, right, with a agreed, pre-negotiated commission. And the tech work behind it, yes, assuming that you have some developers, only take a matter of days, right, your side and their side as well. So within a week, it should be up and running, inclusive of testing. Yeah. Hello?
Hi, just wondering about the pricing. Just now when you're talking about the sweet spots, right? So when you do like testing, I was just wondering, is there a validity period? Like say, this test or this pricing rate is for like certain period, like next year you have to do it again, or like next 3 months, or how long would that sweet spot like?
Sure. I was quite lucky because when we're doing MySale, everything is flash-based, so everything is 4 to 5 days. So by automatic choice, it is 4 days or 5 days comparison versus the previous week. So in other instances, if your product is evergreen, I would think that a week is a decent enough time. I think the biggest indication of whether you need to revalidate 65 ringgit for the black dress is by monitoring the sales of the black dress. If the sales of the black dress is dropping, then you know that it could be pricing that is contributing to it, then test again. So your question is that how many merchandise do you want to put on in order to be enough? The minimum required amount, is that right?
Let's say we want to target this kind of market and we don't want to put...
Yeah. So I'll go back to the approach and the fundamentals again. Speak to your customers.
Stick to my customers.
Yep. And general rule of thumb of what we did last time at MySear is that when we ask customers is that how many pages would you like to see? And by default, in any e-commerce machines, usually about 24 by default, right? So usually they will ask for about 2 to 3 pages before they run out of patience. And another indication, if your product is if your website is live, you can actually indicate and look at through Google Analytics how much time they're actually spending per page. So if you're spending like a minute, how much can you browse through during a minute? Yeah.
So it doesn't give a problem, let's say, it depends on your customer, like
Yeah, I would like to say that it's different from case-to-case basis, but there's always a general rule of thumb. Yeah, which may or may not apply. It's a good start, but you still have to test throughout.
Any more questions? Maybe 2 more questions, perhaps. Okay.
My name is Dylan. Just want to ask, any advice on logistics since you have so many orders?
Can you be more specific? What do you mean by advice on logistics? How so?
What are some of the things that you need to consider, and how do you compare between logistic providers?
It comes back down to your customer experience, right? And also how much they are. Any form of commerce will tell you how much you are paying for a particular service and what sort of service that you get back. So from a logistics perspective, if you are wondering between GDEX versus Post Malaysia versus any other provider, is how much you're actually paying for that service, right? So if you're paying 6 to 10 ringgit for a service, and one of them delivers within 1 day versus someone that delivers within up to 7 days, then it's clear that the 1 day one wins. There are some instances where the geographic reach makes a big difference as well. Like Post Malaysia will probably deliver to any postcode in Malaysia. And in some instances, they also go outside Malaysia as well, right? Depending on what agreement that you have with them. But in GDEX, limited postcodes, although it's 99% of postcodes, there are some areas that they cannot reach. Yeah. But again, I said these are small geographical issues that you have, and it's probably not applicable to you when you're starting up. Yeah. I'm just using that as an example. Yeah. So if you are considering your logistical services, have them meet you, right? Like 2 or 3 of them. And the secret is that you can look at Zalora. Who are they using, right? And you have a very good indication of which one works for them, right? Have them set up a meeting, and they're more than happy to come and hungry for your business, right? And list down the points. What is their delivery? Look for it from a customer perspective.
Okay, one last question. No? Oh.
Talking about providing customer service online, I've realized that mostly American websites, they start to have this online chat room thing where you can talk to their employees or staff like instantly. So like, how is this online chat room thing versus email? Because like, if you have an online chat room, you also need to pay your employees more to work overnight.
I don't have the exact figures to tell you how much better, but I can tell you that online chat when I was in Zalora is actually better than email. But email is a lot cheaper. It's a lot easier to manage from a resource perspective, especially when you're starting up, because online chat requires someone to be on the back all the time, right? So if it is not utilized, it could be a lost resource. Yeah, but it is definitely more effective if your volumes are there versus email.